Good morning and welcome to our final May webinar for the ISM Lunch and Learns. Wendy, once again, you are our sole attendee, so you're going to get another one-on-one demo for a great inventory solution here.
Perfect.
Today we're going to be looking at the ScanForce solution with Mr. Steve Showalter presenting. So with that, I'm just going to turn everything over to Steve. And Steve, welcome, and Wendy, welcome, and thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, Sherry. Hey, Wendy, how are you?
Good, and you?
Good, thanks. What I'm going to do is walk you through this today, and I'm going to do really three things. One is walk you through a few slides so you get a little bit of background on who we are and what products we offer. And then the other two tie into one thing, which is a product demo, but it comes at it from two sides. One is the multi-bin module that can be installed in Sage, and then the scanning that automates receiving, shipping, and inventory transactions as it relates to the multi-bin product. Now, we're fortunate in the sense where it's just kind of more of a one-on-one with you being on the line here. So, you know, Sherry opened it up so that instead of being muted, you can ask questions and things of that sort. And periodically, I'll stop like after a transaction to see if you do have any questions.
Okay, perfect.
All right, so let's get into this so we can go ahead and get your day going on as well here. So you can see my screen, correct, with the green,
Yes.
or I'm sorry, the orange screen here?
Yes.
All right, perfect. So the first part of this, again, is just a little background on ScanForce. We're a master developer, and if you're not familiar with that term, it's just a category of developers. It allows, that Sage gives us, and it allows us to modify Sage if needed, you know, code, which our solution does not modify Sage, but we do have that ability, which also allows us to have that direct tie into the Sage database. And we've been doing it for a long time now. It's actually approaching more like 25 years, so we need to update this, but we've been doing it for a while. Another point is our solution functions connected and disconnected. And when I start on the product demo side of things, I'll mention where you need to be on wireless and where you don't. And this really does two things for us on the solution side of it. One, it makes it an extremely stable solution. If you happen to get disconnected, you know, your network goes down, or you're using a scanner and you walk into a dead spot in the warehouse, our solution continues to function. And in fact, you still get data lookups and even data validations. The other part of that is it makes ScanForce extremely scalable, meaning you can have this set where you're working in a primarily disconnected environment and then walking into, let's say, like a Wi-Fi hotspot to send data back and forth. Or you could have complete coverage and utilize our real-time posting capabilities as well to have a completely real-time solution. So it's pretty flexible. Also, Sage for a long time has acknowledged that it's missing the ability to track these multiple bin locations within a warehouse. So they've been looking for a long time. They've done a lot of evaluation of a lot of products out there, and they settled this past February on our multi-bin, which I'm going to show you here in a little bit, as their selected multi-bin that is actually a part of their 100C product line, but it's also included in our premium version, and that's what I'm going to be showing you here today. Now, the other point here is related to hardware, meaning the scanners. You can run our software on pretty much any device out there. I tell people when we're going ahead and going through a product demo to primarily focus on how the software actually works and functions to make sure that would be a fit for you, and then we can start to narrow down what device would be the best fit, you know, from a functionality standpoint to environment to also pricing. So that's, again, something that you can just run this on pretty much any device. And this last bullet point really ties back to the first one, and that's that master developer status. Allows us to have that direct and seamless communication back to your Sage 100 database. We're not connecting up to a third-party database in the cloud or anything like that and then passing it back. We're going directly wherever your Sage is installed. If you have a hosted Sage system, that's fine. We're right there where Sage is. If you have that loaded on one of your servers, again, we go right into Sage. Now, let's talk a little bit about what ScanForce actually has. What I'm going to focus on today is also the multi-bin, but not only that, the warehouse automation side of ScanForce, which is the shipping, receiving, and inventory. And then I have that bullet point there and much more. Now, I have that there because if I went through every single option within ScanForce, from setup options to enhancements and add-ons, we'd be here for hours, and you would probably be bored to tears soon enough. So I mentioned that just because as we go through this, and as I mentioned, I'll stop and ask if you have any questions. If something doesn't look like it's there that you need, feature, a function, or display, or something like that, let me know, because chances are there's a setup option or an enhancement that covers that, and I may just forget to mention it.
Okay.
Now, we also have a mobile sales module. We're not going to get into that today, but this is an application basically of ours that can be run on tablets, iPads, iPhones, smartphones, and this allows you to enter orders remotely, completely disconnected even if you need to. And that can be sales order entry, invoices, quotes, credit memos, and it can be used, as I mentioned here, field reps, counter sales, trade shows, anywhere you need to be able to create orders remotely. There's a signature capture function there. There's a tie into credit card processing now that we just finished up. You can email receipts remotely. There's kind of a lot that you can do there. And that last bullet point I find pretty interesting. We never thought it would be used this way, but we have some of our customers that actually buy user licenses for their customers. It gets loaded onto a PC and allows their customers to quickly and easily place orders with them without giving them access to their Sage system. Now, as we continue on, we have manufacturing automation. I don't know if that's anything that you guys deal with, but for companies that are using the bill of materials module in Sage or the work order module, we have ways to automate those transactions as well, to go ahead and capture an item that's being made, back flushing the components out, or prompting. You know, making an item, it'll prompt you through each component needed to make that item. On the work order, there are some transactions within that module, material issues, completions, and labor tracking. We all modify those. And the last one here, I will mention and show you some of this today here. We have a label printing software. And what ends up happening is we come across customers that don't have all of their items already barcoded. Maybe some come from the vendor with a barcode on it. But in a lot of instances, we need to print off labels. So what we do is allow you to create the labels on your own. You can design them to look however you want, you know, item number, barcode, description, and whatnot. And that data is pulled from your Sage database, and it also ties into the scanning programs. So for example, when I'm doing a receipt of goods, it'll ask me, do you want to print a receipt label? Right from there, I can tap a button and boom, it'll print a label. And you can still print them from within Sage too. Now, I'm going to click through these pretty quickly here because what we're going to show you here today is this premium version. And that includes all the features and functions of fundamentals and advanced, which is your basic shipping, receiving, inventory counts, and transfers. As you move into the advanced solution, that gets you to more of like a, I'll call it a true WMS system. That's where you have things like the auto posting, making transactions real time. You have a pick and pack and even directed picking, so it can tell you where to go and what to get. And it also, with that pick and pack, allows you to stage orders where Sage doesn't have a really good way to indicate that, hey, listen, this isn't a sales order anymore truly because it's partially picked, but it's also, I don't want it to be an invoice yet because it's not going out the door yet. So we take care of that with our pick and pack. I'll show you our dashboards here today as well, and then there's batch management, meaning you can handle how the batches are created from the scanners in several different ways that I'll mention as part of the product demo here. And then again, our premium version, it includes more advanced pick and pack with a more advanced directed picking using bin allocations. So again, I'll get into that as well as we go through this product demo. And with the premium version, when you get all those advanced scanning programs, we're giving you the MultiBin Advanced for free. So let's get into actually showing you the software now. So let's get off of the PowerPoint here. And the first thing I'm going to do is actually pull up my Sage system. I'm going to hit on some of the highlights of the MultiBin solution here just to kind of get going. First and foremost, the MultiBin is actually loaded as a module into your system. And that's where you have different setup options, how you can control what the bins look like, meaning I want it to have several different segments, like an aisle, rack, shelf position kind of thing. You can have up to 5 segments, and you can determine that within the bin location maintenance. You can even do things like set restrictions for bins, min-max quantities, different zones. The items also have setups as it's related to bins. Maybe a particular bin I want that item to always go into. There's replenishments, putaways, and then also under setup there's additional pieces and parts you can set up here to automatically create bin locations too. Now the best way to start to show some of these things I find is let's go into inventory and let's pull up an item in item maintenance here. So I'm going to pull up a demo item, and this is what everyone's used to seeing in Sage. You know, as far as it relates to quantities, you have this box at the bottom that lists it out by warehouse and transaction. You also have your quantity tab here showing you the same information. Now we look at MultiBin as a drilling into a particular warehouse. So we can do that by either tapping on this bin this bin maintenance button right here, or you can double click. When I double click, this now launches the MultiBin for this particular item, 6655, and warehouse 000, and now I can see all the locations it's in and the quantities in each location. So it's just that detail that you don't have with your standard Sage system. And really we find people look at MultiBin in one of two ways. One is, I want to have a specific item bin relationship. That's where you can set primary bins for items and things of that sort. That would mean, all right, I want this item, for example, to always be going into bin A30M. And as I mentioned earlier, that can be like an aisle, rack, shelf. Aisle A, rack 30, shelf position M, middle. Now, I might also have overflow where it may go to if I don't have enough room in that particular bin. So that's more of an item-bin relationship. The other way, and honestly the more common way we see this set up, is people have items all over the place, and they don't exactly know where they're at. So that's why they obviously need multi-bin. They needed to tell them, hey, listen, it's all over the place. It's in the following 5, 10, however many locations. 10 may be a stretch, but items might be all over the place, and therefore you need to be able to see that. Now, as I get into showing you additional pieces and parts of this demo here, especially on the handheld side, I will flip back into Sage, and then we'll get into details on how bin allocations are handled as well. Any questions on the bin side of this so far?
Not anything right now.
All right. Now, one thing I forgot to mention that I typically mention at this point is, for example, this receiving bin, and I'm going to show you this here in a second on the scanners as well. What a lot of our customers that use multi-bin do is they set up a generic receiving bin, or receiving hold as I have it called here. People do that because they may not know at the time they're receiving items in where they want to put it out on the shelves. So what they'll do is they'll receive it into this particular bin and then do a put away, which I'll show you here in a little bit as well. One of the things that we can do is, I briefly mentioned it, but you can set restrictions for transactions as it relates to a bin. A lot of people will set it up so the only thing you can do with this bin is receive into it and then transfer out of it. You can't sell out of it or anything. So you can almost look at this as like a quarantine bin as well. So let's get into the actual scanning side of this now. So I typically start at receipt of goods. To me, that's the entry of an item into your system. We'll hit on some inventory transactions from there and then finish up with the shipping of an order. So first thing is, when you launch our program on a scanner, this is the screen you're going to see. Now, I told you a little while ago, don't worry about the actual hardware side of it, but I do like to mention what you're looking at here. This is a TC70 from Zebra. It's probably the most popular handheld, and that is because it's got a 6-foot drop rating onto concrete. The screen here and even a little window where the laser shoots out to scan a barcode is Corning Gorilla Glass, so if you drop this, it's not going to crack, scratch, or anything like that. It has an IP67 rating, which simply means it's water and dust tight, and the screens are designed to get dusty and dirty and still be responsive to touch, which is pretty important in a warehouse. So again, I said don't worry too much about the hardware side of things, but this is just one example of many. I mean, you can run on an iPod Touch, for example, with a snap-in scanner sled, or there are long-range scanners. There's a lot of different things. No matter what device you would ever use our software with, the screens are going to look exactly the same as I'm showing you here. So the first thing is there's a login. Now, this doesn't take up additional Sage licenses, and our licensing is tied to the device itself. So for example, you could have 10 devices, but you could have 30 of these user logins if you wanted. This just allows us to do really two things. One, it allows us to control permissions, so you can control who's allowed to do what on the scanner. And within our dashboard, there's a management console where we actually keep track of everything that's done on the scanners, so we can track who's done what as well. Now, I don't have a password set for mine, so I'm going to bypass that step there. And the last piece of information is the company code. So if you have multiple company codes set up in Sage, ScanForce doesn't require multiple installs for each company. You simply just indicate which company you're logging into on the device when you first log in. Now, since I don't have a password, I tapped accept. This is my main screen where I have inventory transactions, utilities, order processing, and then we're not going to get into manufacturing today, but I'm going to tap on that and show you this is where we have our production entry and our work order transactions. So as I mentioned, let's start with receiving. We have a purchase order in our system. Now those items have arrived on the receiving dock and we need to receive them in. As the user, I would simply tap on order processing, launch PO receiving. The device is now going to ask me, what purchase order are you receiving in? So what I can do here is I can key that in. I also could tap this lookup, which will communicate up wirelessly to Sage and real-time display for me now what purchase orders are available to receive in. If I'm using this lookup, I can use that search box and search by vendor name or purchase order number. I also could take my finger and scroll through on the screen, find a purchase order and hit accept, and choose it from there. That'll connect up to Sage and grab that data for that purchase order and place it on my device. Now, I won't get into too many details on this, but we do have a lot of other options. They were on that menu. There's even a way to receive in multiple POs at the exact same time where you go by item as opposed to by PO and then item. That we call wave receiving. So if you have like a big container coming in from overseas, for example, and it's a bunch of POs mixed together, you can combine those together and then go item by item. If that item is only on one purchase order, it assigns it to that receipt of goods. If it's on multiple POs, it would then ask you, what PO do you want to assign this to for the receiving? So let's just go purchase order by purchase order here, and let's just assume we have this barcoded here on a printed off sheet from Sage, because that would be the most common way to do this. If you don't have a barcode to scan, you would print off the purchase order utilizing crystal forms and the Azalea fonts for barcodes that you already have in Sage. You can have your purchase order print off with the PO number barcoded. You could also barcode the item numbers if needed on that as well. If you're really lucky, you could probably ask your vendor, could you put my purchase order number barcoded on my packing list? And they might do that for you. We have some customers that have gotten lucky with that. Either way, when you go ahead and scan the barcode then, what it'll do is it's going to communicate up to Sage real time, grab the data for that purchase order, place it on my device. It also locks that PO back in Sage so no one can get into it and change anything while I'm receiving it. Now with multi-bin, we have to tell it where we're receiving into. So again, most people will just go ahead and have the receiving set as a default bin. It'll then hold that so I can go item by item now. Now, if your items are already barcoded, you can scan the item. Even if it's barcoded with an item number that doesn't match your item number, you can still scan that barcode, and as long as that's set up as an alias number back in Sage, our solution is going to recognize it as your part number. We even have the option to allow you to create an alias at this point. So if you were to scan an item that's not on, or a barcode that's not on this PO, it's going to instantly validate that for you, and with a setting that allows you to create the alias right here at receipt of goods, it would, instead of telling me this message, it would say, do you want to now save this as an alias number? Now, if I needed to, I also have a lookup here for items, and this, whether I was connected or not, would display for me. And as I receive items in, they drop off of this lookup. If it's a large lookup, I can look by description or item number. Most often, though, people will again scan a barcode. If the items aren't barcoded, like I mentioned, you can barcode the items on the purchase order as well. When you scan an item, though, and get a valid item, you get some item information here. So it's going to default to the quantity field here, pull up my numeric keypad, and show me some information down here as far as I have 60 remaining because I've received in 0 out of the 60 on this PO. I see the item description here, and up on the top right, it's showing me the unit of measure. So if you only have one unit of measure set up back in Sage under item maintenance, you can't change this. However, in this instance, I have this item set up where back in Sage, it's set that I purchase by the case quantity, but I stock and sell by eaches. That means that I can go ahead and convert that here on the scanner, though, because it's going to default to whatever's on the PO, and I have 10 eaches per case as my unit of measure conversion. So if I do switch this over, it'll know that and automatically convert that for me. Again, if you only have one unit of measure set up, you won't be able to change it. In the real life example, this would be, 59 cases came in complete, the 60th was partial. I can receive in 59, convert it over to eaches, and then receive in my partial case. Now, when I key in my quantity, if I accidentally am not paying attention, let's say I go to key in 600 because I'm looking at eaches, the solution is going to validate that for you as well. And based on how you have your user permission set, it'll either tell you, like my demo is here, that you're just not allowed to over-receive, or it can be set to warn you, and then you can continue on. And again, just make sure that you're not making a mistake there. So, I enter in the appropriate quantity. If you need to print labels and have our labeling software, this is where the handheld now prompts me, do you want to print labels? I can tap print. It'll connect up to the server and print out to a network thermal printer. Now I can label my own items. And I can design the labels to look however I want. For this example, this is a 4x2 label. I could have multiple forms set up as well. And what you can do is also have this set so that it looks back to Sage. Once again, item maintenance, where you can indicate whether or not you want to print receipt labels for an item. So let's say you have a mixed bag. Some items come with barcodes and some don't. Well, the items that come in with barcodes, you don't want somebody accidentally printing off a bunch of labels, so you just set it to no, and our scanner won't even ask you for that to print labels for that item. Now, as you go through, if it's a large PO and you get lost, you have two ways to kind of check to see where you're at. One, I can do this item lookup, and as I mentioned, the items that are received in drop off. Only the items that are left are listed here. I also, if I want to see what I've scanned, so kind of looking at it from the other side of things, what have I already scanned and received in? At the top, there's a clipboard that lists out all the items that I've received in so far. And this is the screen where I could actually go in, highlight this, hit the delete, or the trash can at the top to delete this item, and then re-receive it in if I made a mistake. So you have a little bit of editing power here on the scanner. Now let's say I'm done, got to send my data back to Sage. I can tap this arrow right here that gets me to my send data screen. Excuse me. Now, at this point, this is showing me what I've collected, so the records collected is what I've received in. Any item that's not completely received in is categorized as an unresolved line. Now, if it's because I didn't get that item in, that's fine. But a lot of our customers tell us they go pretty quickly and sometimes skip over an item. They received it in, they just skipped over it on accident. Now, if you're paying attention, you'll see that now, and you can tap Order Summary and correct whatever you made a mistake on. We found, though, most people hit that arrow button and then boom, hit Send Data. So we give you one more warning here. Once again, if I didn't get that item in, I hit Send, it'll send it back to Sage, and then standard back ordering would kick in. If you have that enabled, it'll back order it. If you don't, it won't. However, at this point, if I'm going quickly and I realize, wait a second, thought I received everything in, I can go ahead and tap Review, see the line in question. If I did in fact receive it, just highlight it, hit Accept, record my receipt, print labels if necessary, and continue on. Now, when I send my data over this time, it's completely received in purchase order, so it's going to connect up and import back into my Sage system. Now, if it can't connect for whatever reason, it'll just store it on the device and you can send it later. You're never going to lose data. If you have our auto posting turned on, which makes it real time, it would automatically post that transaction. You wouldn't have to come back here and do anything. However, for all demos and things of that sort, I always turn that off so that I can actually pull this up and show you that, hey, it actually does work. So I'm going to go into receipt of goods entry. And I'm also going to discuss for a second the options as it relates to batches. So with batch processing turned on, what it's going to do is right out of the box, it's going to be set up to import into the last ScanForce batch, not marked private. If there isn't one, it'll go ahead and generate one for you. Your other options are to create batches ahead of time, and the scanner would then ask you what batch do you want to import into, and then you can choose that right from the device. You could have it set up to do a batch per user, so if I'm out there and Sherry's out there, we can each have our own batch importing into. Or you can have it create a new batch every time it imports in. So you have some options there. Now I'm just going to go ahead and grab the batch it automatically created. Here's the receipt of goods. If we go to lines, you'll see it populates the quantity of what we said we received in. And here's the bin distribution that tells us where it's received into. So again, you could manually post this if you wanted to, or if you had auto posting turned on, that'll go ahead and update this transaction. Our auto posting doesn't change anything in Sage. All we're doing is triggering that posting to happen at the time this imports in. So you can still have your registry print off just like you normally do. So that's receiving. Any questions on the receiving process?
Nope, seems pretty easy.
All right. Now, there is another part of receiving that we'll talk about here. So if we do receive into just, let's say, a generic holding bin for receiving, what you're going to want to do is back out of this. Now go into inventory transactions, and halfway down there in the middle is put away. So when you go to put items away, it's really just doing a bin transfer. And you have an option to have it hold the same from location or the same to location, so I don't have to keep on entering the locations. Typically, you're going to use the same from location. It now wants to know what warehouse I'm working in, so any warehouse code you have set up in Sage is going to go ahead and show up here. If you only have one, then obviously you don't have any to choose from. But what it'll do at this point is say, all right, where are you pulling items from? So we're going to take items out of receiving, and now it's going to ask me for my item. So at this point, I can scan the item, or I could even do this flashlight lookup, and with what we call live mode, it's going to keep track of this real time. So it's going to be checking bin locations for items and quantities and displaying that for me on the scanner. So again, I could have scanned this, but let's just tap on it from right here. Excuse me. What it does is it goes ahead and checks my Sage system, and it looks and tells me, all right, you have 100 of this item in this receiving bin. Let's say we're going to put 25 away. Where am I taking it to? If I have a primary bin set up, it's going to suggest for me to go to that bin. If I don't, then this would be blank, and I can go ahead and put it wherever I want. You also can reference a put away report. A lot of our customers will print off those and use that to reference as they're putting items away. Let's just go ahead and put it over to A30M. Now, at this point, I don't have to do anything else with live mode. Every time I do a transfer and move things around, it's going to automatically connect up and update Sage for me on that. That keeps everything real time for you, and I can show you that here if I go back into item maintenance and pull up that item. You'll see that when we go into receiving, we had 100, and now we have 75. So again, it's just keeping everything real time for you, so whenever you look at this, you know everything's up to date in your Sage system. Any questions on put away? Or any questions back here in Sage as far as any of the questions related to multi-bin or anything?
No, so far all is good.
All right then. Now we'll hit a couple of these pretty quickly here. You know, inventory counts, whether you're doing a cycle count or a year-end inventory, you can have multiple scanners out there, indicate your warehouse, walk up to a location, shoot the barcode, shoot your item. Oops, I misread that barcode, so let's go ahead and shoot the other item. It validates that for you. So whether you're connected or not, as I just showed you there, if you scan or enter in an item that's not in your Sage system, it's not going to let you count that. So you don't have to worry again, even if you're disconnected. You don't have to worry about someone counting a make-believe item, basically. So once I give it the location and the item, I'll tell it that I counted 700 of these. Continue on. If you have multiple items in that same bin, you can keep counting. If you need to switch bins, just tap back. Scan my next bin. Scan my next item. Oops. And now just enter my quantity for this one. Stay at count of 500. The big thing about this is not only capturing this data like this, but to get this into Sage, all I do is tap a button, send it back to my Sage system, and instead of having to sit there and key all that back into my Sage system, it's going to import right back there for me. So when I pull up physical count entry, what we just counted is going to be right here. Now, you still want to print off the variance report that standard Sage has to let you know. I mean, I'm pretty close with both of these, but I'm not completely on. So you'd still want to run your variance report. If you have a question, you can send somebody back out to recount it. One of the big things is, if someone counts this item twice, let's say, it'll accumulate that quantity for you. So if I go up and I mark, all right, I've counted, 200 out of bin A50U for this, and then I marked that I've counted those. Somebody else comes up behind me and they count the remaining amount. It's not going to wipe out what I've done. Now again, if it's double counted, then you'll catch it on the variance report. But the data's in here with a tap of a button. Any questions on that?
No.
All right. Now, back on the scanner here, I'm going to back out over to inventory transactions. You have the ability here to do an inventory transfer as well. Now, this could be from bin to bin, which is very similar to that put away that we just did. Or if you have multiple warehouses set up, you can move it from one warehouse to another. Now, multi-bin can be enabled by warehouse code or even by item. So I can turn it on and off by warehouse or by item. I have 001 is set up as a non-multi-bin warehouse. So I'm going to go ahead and show you this just so you can see how it behaves. It'll hold the warehouse codes for me. So now I can just scan an item, connects up. It tells me now, all right, where are you pulling it from? And it shows me these are the bins and here are the quantities this item is in. Now I could scan my bin location or just simply tap on it from my screen there. It's going to double check the quantity. Say we're moving 25. And it's not going to ask me where I'm taking it to because 001 is non-multi-bin. If 001 is non-multi-bin. If that was a multi-bin warehouse, it would have obviously asked me for a bin location. Now, when I send this back to Sage, this is actually creating a transaction record in my Sage system. So I would have to either have auto posting turned on, or I would have to come back in here and manually post this. But it simply just imports it back into my Sage system seamlessly. Grab my inventory batch. And here's the transfer we just did. Again, auto posting would be turned on and this would become real time, or you can come back here and review this transaction. Now, even bin to bin transfers, you still have a record of every bin transfer that's occurred, but it's not hitting the transaction registry here the same way, so that's why this would have to have auto posting enabled to have this happen. Any questions on that?
No.
All right. Now, the last couple of transactions here, I'm not going to go into, but I'll mention them very quickly. They're not that commonly used, but they are part of our standard software. You can do inventory issues, which is simply relieving inventory. And within that transaction, you have the option to allow the user to specify the GL account that's being used. If you have that option turned on, we give you a user-defined table where you pull over only the GL accounts that you want available on the scanner. That way you don't have to give somebody access to all your GL accounts. And you can change the description in that table as well. So they're maybe using a description that might make more sense from a warehouse standpoint rather than an accounting standpoint. Inventory receipts just bypasses, vendor and everything, just takes it right into inventory. Pretty straightforward. What's your item, what's your quantity, and where are you taking it? So that'll go ahead and be a pretty straightforward receipt in. Most people that are using purchase order aren't using that. If you decided that you wanted to use the solution and didn't need these transactions, they would show up here, but they would just be grayed out so no one accidentally gets into them. All right, now, to finish this up here, we're going to talk about the shipping side of this. This is going to take a little bit of time here because we need to discuss the allocations. So with multi-bin, you have the ability now to basically reserve items from a particular location, and that can be done utilizing these allocations. Allocations can be manual or they can be automatic. If they're automatic, you can set certain rules up. If you just to name a couple of them here, if you have lotted items or serialized items, You can have it do a true FIFO, for example. You want it to take the oldest one first, and it'll allocate you to that location first. You also could do things like setting it up to allocate from an item specific bin. So if I have item 6655, always an A30M, that's where I want to allocate to first, and it would go to like an overflow bin after that. Another option is some people like to have it set where it's going to allocate to the bin with the most of that item in it first, or the fewest. The idea behind that is I may not want it to go to several bins, so I want it to direct me to the bin that has the most. Or I want it to completely relieve a bin so that I can fill that bin with other items, so I want it to go to the bin with the fewest in it first. Now, the best way I've found to show this is to actually pull up sales order, and let's just quickly create a brand new order here. So we have an order here, order 217. We'll go ahead and grab a vendor or a customer, and let's just add an item. And it defaulted to warehouse 000, or 002. Sorry, let me go ahead and go to 000 because that's a multi-bin warehouse. All right. So let's just go ahead and put in that we ordered 20 of this item, and we'll switch our warehouse code. All right. Now you can have it automatically allocate as you enter in the sales order. You can also have it ask you, do you want to auto-allocate? I'm going to say no to this. And you also can have it set to do the auto-allocations at picking sheet printing. Most people go with picking sheet printing because that's when the order is basically ready to go. So that's the point you want it to look and check quantities out in the bins. But I'm going to say no here. Let's add another line. And now I'm going to go in and manually allocate these. So if you wanted to manually allocate them, you can go here to the bin distribution, and I can go ahead and key this in. So let's go ahead and do A50U for this particular item. And this next item, I'm going to do A30M. Now I did that on purpose because I want to show you on the scanner how we direct you to the bin, and we do so in the bin location order. That way you're not walking all over your warehouse. You're going to walk in one swoop through your warehouse to pick all your items. So back on the scanner now, we have the option to allow you to do sales order picking, which then you can do a checking and packing, which is what I was mentioning earlier about the pick, pack, and ship. That allows you to stage an order. Maybe it's just for a day, a few hours, or whatnot, but you're allowed to stage that then without creating the invoice. If you do that, you still have the ability to do our SO shipping, which is basically a one-step shipping process. You're not staging it and then it's going out the door. It's just going out the door. And it still will direct you through, just like I'm about to show you with the picking process here. The difference is just, again, it won't do the transfer and everything else. It's just going to generate the invoice for you. So let's just go through and do a picking really quickly. First, it's going to ask me for the order number. Just like we did on the purchase order side of things for receiving, you can have this barcoded on a picking sheet. You can key it in. You can also do a lookup, which is going to connect up real time to Sage. We can scroll down to the bottom, and we can go ahead and find our order, select it, and it'll connect up real time to Sage, grabbing that information for that order and placing it on my device now. Now, what I can do is say, all right, I'm going to pick to my shipping bin, let's say. And you could have this set as shipping 1, shipping 2, staging 1, 2, 3, whatever you wanted to do. But this is where you're now going to stage items to. And it's telling me, go to bin A30M, grab D1000, and then next you're going to go to A50U. So this is how, again, it sorts it for you automatically. So we go up and grab our item. It's going to go ahead, it didn't read the barcode very clearly at that point. I'm scanning off a sheet of paper here, so they're not that clear. But once you get a valid item then, it's telling me, all right, you have to go to A30M. I could scan that or just tap on the screen. We'll scan it. Tells me I have 10 allocated. And then that item drops off, so I only see what's left to be picked. Now, if this was a large order and I pick part of it, and then Sherry comes up later to pick the rest of it, the only items that will be displayed on her scanner will be the ones that I did not pick. So it's not going to show you what you need, what someone else has already done. Again, I can go ahead and tap on the screen here. Let's just complete picking this one. And now when I'm done, I send it back to Sage. Now, if I did skip an item just like on receiving, it would warn me of that. But now when I send this information back to my Sage system, two things happen. First is it's going to move it out of the bin that it was allocated in, and it's going to put it over into our shipping bin. So if I pull up my Sage system here and go into one of these items, and I launch Multi-Bin here, you're going to see it now move 20 over to shipping. Those weren't there before. So it does that real time, instantly moves it over there for you. The other thing it does is it'll actually write back to that sales order, and it's going to reallocate that bin for us. So when I go into lines here, and we check out these items, it's now allocated to shipping. So this gives you that complete visibility as far as what's happening with an order, which ones have been staged, which ones are ready to go out, which ones are in the process of being shipped. And another place that we show you that is our dashboards. So this requires a separate login. It doesn't require additional users or anything, but you can set up logins to this. Not everyone has access to it. But this gives you a quick snapshot of what's happening out there. I have my orders that are ready to pick, orders that are being picked, ready to pack and ship. A quick snapshot here, and this is a typical, let's say, beginning of the day. And the blue is ready to pick, purple is shipped. So as the day goes on, this is updated real time from the scanners. So as I pick orders, then this purple is going to get larger as the blue gets smaller. And you're able to dive into this and see details as far as what orders make up each section here. Also, while I'm in the dashboards here, I want to show you that we have different layouts where you can actually select a performance layout and now see who's done what. So this first part here is, I have 3 people out there shipping. This first 2, they've shipped 3 orders to this person's 4. So it looks like everybody's doing about the same work until you look at the lines shipped freeze. So for these 2 people that have shipped 3 orders, this person has shipped 82 lines in the time it took this person to ship 36. So you start to get an idea of who's doing what out there. And even if you want to give this person the benefit of the doubt, maybe they have a lot of quantity per line, we show you that as well here. Now, that's not the case for this person, but you get the idea of the data that's out here. And we even have customers that put this on big screen TVs out in the warehouse to allow their users to pretty much self-govern. Like, this person is going to come over and find the person in purple here and ask them what they're doing if they're working to go ahead and pick 82 lines to 36. Now, the last part of the dashboards and management console is this transactions section. So we keep track of everything that's happening on the scanners. And this is what I mentioned at the very, very beginning when we were talking about the user login. That's how we're able to track then who does what. And there's a transaction date and time, what transaction it was, obviously who it was, start, stop time, item, description, order number, so on and so on. And basically keeps track of everything. And people can come in here then and say, all right, well, I want to check out what happened with, let's say, my most popular item. And I can go ahead and see, all right, I want to see what sales orders that was on. So you can start typing that in, and it'll narrow that down for you. And if you get this down to whatever data you want to see, you can now go over to the export button here and choose how you want to export this file. So you can create your own reports. We've also had people utilize this dashboard like this, where once they do, let's say, an inventory count, they have a few items that were just completely off once they ran their variance report. Well, they can come in here, key on those items, key in that transaction, see who did it, and go basically ask that person. This actually happened to one of them not too long ago, where they had a few lines that weren't accurate. And they went in here and found out it was the same person. They had like 5 people counting, but it was the same person that kept screwing up. So this just gives you additional data you can go in and mine if you need to. All right, so let's finish up that order. So we've picked an order. Now it's just sitting there ready to go. What you can do is go into checking and packing, grab your order. Again, you can scan it or look it up. It's going to connect up to Sage, grabbing that order real time here. And now it's going to default to shipping. That's where I picked it to, so it's going to default to that bin for me. Now it's still showing me that method of directed picking, but it's not really telling me where to go because everything's been staged for me right here. What it does allow you to do, though, is if you're using shipping data entry back in Sage, and especially if you're using a shipping software like Starship or something like that, or WorldShip, what you can do is you can actually separate the items by packages. And that writes back to the package field in shipping data entry. It may not be an actual box. It may be, like a pallet or whatnot. You can just basically group the items together. On the scanner, you can indicate that. So let's say we're going to grab this first item here. Now let's say out of the 20, let's say 10 fit into package 1. To change packages, I just tap the plus button, grab that item again. It shows me that I've already picked 10 of them, so I only have 10 left. Pack our remaining 10. Let's say there's a little bit of room in package 2 still, so we'll put 5 of this item here, go to package 3 and finish it up. So this is, again, just a checking and packing. You're double checking what the picker did, and you're actually able to separate that by package. Now, if you guys don't do that, we have a ship all that you can pull this up, eyeball it, and say, yep, it's all correct, and then that'll create the invoice for you. You don't have to go item by item at this point if you don't want. If you're packaging it by box, obviously you'd want to do that, though. So when I'm done now, and I send this back over, it's now going to communicate up to Sage, and it's going to import back over into shipping data entry or invoice data entry. If you're not using shipping data entry at all, it also imports into shipping data, or I'm sorry, invoice data entry. So I'll grab my batch, pull up that order, And here's my information back in Sage. And if I go to packages, you'll see the items are separated out by packages. 5 are in package 3 of this item. Package 2 has both. Package 1 just has this one item here. Any questions about that?
No.
All right. Well, that concludes what we were going to show you here today. Was there any other questions on multi-bin or anything like that?
Does this work for inventory also? Like when we're doing physical counts? You know how it has locations and all we have to do is also just scan the item and add the counts? Or do we have to... Sorry.
That's under that physical count where you can go in here, indicate the warehouse you're counting, tell it the location, tell it your item. Oops, it's not reading that barcode very clearly.
It adds an extra number.
I know, every time I scan it, it's doing that. I need to reprint these barcodes is what I need to do, but make sure it's a valid item here. Now, all I do is enter in what I've counted here. Let's just add 100 here. And then you just keep counting items. If you need to change the bins, then you tap back, change your bin location. When you're done, just send your data over. And now this is, I counted items a little while ago in this, so it's going to just show this additional information, but it puts it right back into physical count entry here in Sage.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, because that's what we have a big issue about.
Okay, yep.
Because like you said,
so this what it did was,
there's so many people counting that some of them write the wrong quantity, or you can't read their numbers, and I'm entering the numbers, so if I don't read something correctly, of course I'm doing it wrong.
Yeah. I mean, this does two things. One, it just makes it easier on the person counting to go ahead and capture the data. Then with the tap of a button, it's in Sage, so no one has to interpret, well, what did they write down, and then possibly key it in incorrectly as well. And if someone does make a mistake, then you have the traceability where you can print off your variance report, see that you're off, and then go into that management console, as I mentioned, and find where they went wrong.
Okay, perfect.
All right. Any other questions that you wanted to cover?
Nope, that's it.
All right.
Perfect. Thank you, Steve, and thank you, Wendy, for your time today. Wendy, also just a reminder that all of our webinars do get posted up to our ISM YouTube channel. So if you ever need to review this with someone else, they will be up there. I'm going to try and get everything posted up today from the last week or so.
Perfect.
So if you ever want to look at something again, it is up there. And as always, if you want to schedule a one-on-one demo with Steve and your team, we can always do that. You just need to reach out to me.
Okay, perfect. I will let you know.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, everyone, for your time. Have a great Memorial Day weekend. And thank you for attending. We'll be sending out next month's schedules early next week. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.